Umpisa na po natin ngayong hapong ito sa isang maiksing panalangin. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Dear Lord, again, we come to you seeking your wisdom and guidance. Alam po namin na maraming hinaharap ang aming bansa ngayon, ang aming simbahan, ang aming po ibang grupo. Kaya sana tulungan mo kami na magkaroon po ng isang discerning heart and discerning spirit para maigma po namin ang mga bagay-bagay na dapat namin pong gawin bilang grupo upang makatulong kami na palakasin ang ating sama-sama. At sana po, Panginoon, gabayan mo rin kami sa tamang paraan, sa tamang desisyon na ma-address po ang lahat ng mga hinaharap namin. In particular way, Lord, we lift up to you our fight for life, especially on the issue of the reimposition of the death penalty. Alam po namin, maliwanag ang katuruan nyo at ang katuruan ng simbahan. At sana po may uphold namin ito. At inaasahan po namin na itong session namin, conversation namin ngayong hapong ito ay magbibigay pa ng mas magandang kaliwanagan sa amin. At sana sama-sama kaming magtulong-tulong na mapanatili ang aming pagtatanggol, pag-uphold ng buhay na binigay mo sa aming lahat. So again, we lift up to you the rest of our afternoon. We lift up to you our resource speaker, Commissioner Gomez-Dumpit, and we pray that you bless her with the wisdom to be able to communicate to us. This we pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Amen.
Thank you po. Good afternoon.
Kuya Raquel, opo. Ngayon po ay tatawagin ko si His Excellency Bishop Abilio para po ibigay ang opening message. I-request ko rin po, Bishop, baka pwedeng pakibigyan mo naman sila ng background ng Shema, kahit mga isang mixing theological discussion lang para maintindihan nila yung pinanggagalingan natin ng Shema, which is really to listen and do. Opo. Good afternoon, Bishop.
Good afternoon. Maraming salamat ulit po sa inyo sa pagdalo ninyo dito sa ating conversation. Naging kaugalian na natin ito mula pa noong Marso, no, na magtagpo-tagpo tayo every week in order to educate ourselves about what's happening in the country. Ngayon po, nung nakaraang linggo, ang mga kaparian ng Archdiocese of Manila, naglabas po kami ng aming statement against death penalty. So nakakatuwa naman na yung mga pare ay naging aktibo na sa mga social issues na nangyayari ngayon. At yan po ibabasahin sa mga misa sa Archdiocese of Manila bukas. Pero kasama sana ng mga pare ay ang mga laity rin, mga laiko rin. Pero para tayo magkaroon ng courage na magsalita, kailangan natin ng kaalaman. That's why we are organizing these conversations na tayo po ay magkaroon ng kaalaman sa nangyayari sa lipunan, and hopefully when we are well acquainted with what's happening and what our faith tells us how to react to these events, we will also be able to come up with our own statements para po mapakinggan din ang boses ng simbahan. At ang boses ng simbahan sa mga issues ngayon ay hindi lang boses ng kaparian. Yan po'y boses din ng mga laiko. Napansin ko po sa ating mga conversations, umaabot tayo regularly between 70 to 50 na mga participants. Pero tandaan po natin, yung ating subscription sa Zoom ay hanggang 100. Naghihinayang ako, may 30 slots pa o 40 slots kuminsan na hindi napupuno. Siguro dito po sa atin, please try to invite more of your friends. Kung bawat isa sa atin mang-invite ng isa pa para sumama dito, ay mas lalong lalawak po ang ating kaalaman at kaalaman ng laiko. So yan po yung atin. If you find that this is helpful to you, please invite also others sa susunod pa ng mga conversations. At ang pamagat po natin sa ating conversations ngayon ay Shema. Ang Shema po, yan po isang sa salita sa Hebrew na nangangahulugan ng listen. At yan po ay isang bahagi ng dasal ng mga Israelita na matatagpuan natin sa Deuteronomy chapter 6. Listen, O Israel, there is only one God, the Lord our God. We must serve Him with all our hearts, with all our strength, with all our own soul. So yan po ay dinadasal nila every day, several times a day. Kasi yan yung napakahalaga ng kanilang pananampalataya. That there is one God and we love Him and we serve Him as first of all sa lahat ng mga bagay. Ang salitang Shema ay hindi lang po yung listen na mapakinggan, na marinig. Kasama po ng Shema ay ang listen and do. No, ang ating napakinggan ay dapat nating gawin. Kaya hindi lang yan passive. O I hear you. No, I listen to you. I hear you. Hindi lang. But we are inuudyok tayo na gumawa ayon sa ating napakinggan. So, yan po yung pinamamagat natin sa mga conversations natin ngayon. Shema, listen and do. No, kaya ngayon po ay mayroon tayong naimbitahan na galing po sa Commission on Human Rights mismo, isang commissioner that would enlighten us about the issue na pinag-uusapan na ngayon sa House, lower House, sa Senate, no, dahil po sa SONA ng Presidente na gusto niyang maging priority ito, ang pag-reimpose ng death penalty. Kaya maganda po na mapakinggan natin from the point of view of the human rights, no, sa Commission mismo ng Human Rights, ano po yung issue ng death penalty, kung ito ba'y makatutulong sa atin o hindi sa ating kalagayan ngayon. Kaya welcome again sa inyong pagdalo dito sa ating conversations.
Thank you po, Bishop Abilio. Ngayon po, naintindihan nyo na ang Shema. Listen and do. Hear, O Israel, the Lord is God, the Lord is one. So yan po yung ating isinisigaw na katangian ng ating Diyos na atin na mapakikinggan at ipaglalaban tayo kikilos po. Sisimulan na po natin ang pagpapakilala ngayon sa ating speaker. Medyo maganda po ang curriculum vitae na napadala sa atin. Okay? Ang sabi po, Karen Dumpit has served the Philippine government for the past 29 years. Kaya nagbilang po ako, siguro nagsimula siyang mag-serve 11 years old, no? Napakabatang nagsimula. Joke po yun. Ibig sabihin po talaga matagal na siyang nagsisilbi, and 26 years of which has been devoted to human rights advocacy, including 9 years as the first director of the Commission on Human Rights Child Rights Center, a career executive service officer number 4 since 1998, and her last post before her appointment as commissioner was the Director of Government Linkage Office, or now called GovLink. She finished AB Communication Arts in De La Salle in 1989, and in 1994 she earned a postgraduate degree, Masters in Public Management with honors, with honors at the Development Academy of the Philippines, and obtained a Masters of Science in Human Rights with honors as a British Chevening Scholar at the London School of Economics and Political Science in 2004. Naglalagay po ako nung with honors kasi kailangan po talaga naman ina-acknowledge natin yung pinaghirapan ng mga tao sa buhay nila. And it benefits us to know the kind of people that we are listening to. So it's a way of honoring our speaker this afternoon. Okay? And she has carried out and implemented programs to carry out the constitutional mandate to monitor government compliance with human rights treaty obligations. harmonizing domestic laws in accordance with standards and principles set by core international human rights instruments, monitoring of Philippine jurisprudence that affirms human rights treaties, and advising the executive and other relevant state agencies on its implementation of the obligation to respect, protect, and fulfill human rights. With the forgiveness, medyo puputulin ko na po, Ma'am Karen, yung ilan dito. Okay, because excited ko rin kaming marinig ka. Okay, but we go back to the point when Commissioner Karen, along with other members of the 5th Commission, that is from the 2015 to 2022 Commission, serves a 7-year term which ends on May 5, 2022. Kaya't marami pa pong trabaho si Commissioner Karen. Commissioner Karen, maraming salamat. We welcome you and we will be all ears for your presentation. Good afternoon.
Marami pong salamat, Brother June. Maraming salamat po kay Brother Roquel sa paanyaya ngayong araw na to. And of course, kay Bishop Pabilio, magandang hapon po sa ating lahat. Sa Laiko, magandang hapon po. No? Allow me to just, I understand that I have considerable time this time. Hindi ko po alam kung nanood po kayo sa Kongreso nung isang araw. Medyo nag-grill po tayo ng husto doon, but I only had a few minutes then and was actually warned and advised by Chair Ching Veloso to to shorten my presentation. But today I have some luxury of time, so I will do it into portions. No? The first, of course, is my message to all of you. I will do that. And then we will go into a more technical PowerPoint presentation of what I presented in Congress later on. So allow me to just share with you my message to all of you po. So this is the first part po. For this opportunity to speak before the Council of the Laity of the Philippines. Maraming salamat po sa pag-anyaya. With unrelenting efforts to reintroduce the death penalty, the challenge of affirming the right to life has become more formidable. But as I have promised, and as the Commission on Human Rights has promised, we will be as relentless in the fight for the right to life. About 4 years ago, the presidential elections saw a dark horse candidate with a campaign promise to restore the death penalty, among other draconian measures that will presumably put in order a drugs-driven, crime-ridden Philippine society. The promise of swift justice, stern political will, in this case a do-it-at-all-cost attitude, attracted a plurality of the voting public. We have come to realize that public opinion has always been used as the driver for the reintroduction of the death penalty in our country. Majority of the people want this. Staunch supporters of the death penalty cited reasons for this like a mantra, and it still holds true today. Death penalty is a deterrence. There have been many heinous crimes committed. People are furious at the gore of not just bizarre murders, mass killings, massacres of families, of rape of women, children, kidnapping, plunder, and other corruption cases, even carnapping, robbery of mobile phones even in the past. Most of these cases were part of a laundry list of crimes that in the past meted the death penalty enumerated in the death penalty law. It will sow fears into the hearts of criminals so they will think twice about committing a crime, goes an often quoted spiel. An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. Retributive justice. People's minds were conditioned in a campaign to hate the criminal without the trial and othering the person suspected of committing the crime by dehumanizing them. They are animals. They can no longer be rehabilitated. Image also helped fuel the fire, parading suspects arrested by the police in media, along with the coverage of gory scenes, have stoked this frustration to anger and hate towards those presented and perceived to have committed a crime without due process, a publicity before the actual trial. Impunity and corruption also added into the mix. People in high places and people with means were seen to have gotten away with it. Reports of convicted persons who are supposed to be serving time have been allowed to go in and out of prison at will. Today, as we have witnessed in the latest State of the Nation address of the President, death penalty is still and remains to be at the top of the President's legislative agenda. The Commission, as a national human rights institution, has been against the death penalty at the onset of our creation. No genuine national human rights institution is for the death penalty. In this continuing call for death, we must continue to reflect and set a course for a strategic, heightened, and united rally against the resurgence of the death penalty. Knowing that the fuel to reintroduce the death penalty is filled with false assumptions and misguided public opinion, the Commission went down to the ground and conducted community-based dialogues, which we hope Laiko will help us replicate through Shema, as we are doing right now. This was designed to raise the level of public awareness about human rights and the death penalty, addressing wrong notions on the myth that the death penalty has deterrent effects, reminding them of the significance of everyone's right to due process and the tenet of an eye to an eye. But a unique feature of this dialogue is a no judgment discussion of why people are pro or against the death penalty. We use this platform to understand the pulse of the people regarding the death penalty. There was a different legal landscape from the first cycle when the law on the death penalty was reintroduced for the first time. Pro-death penalty legislators were citing that the Constitution allowed for the reintroduction of the death penalty. This time, with the Philippines being a state party to the second optional protocol, we have and continue to do so. We beefed up our legal research and partnered with allies at home and abroad. We reviewed all studies on the implementation of the death penalty, cited statistics that would debunk the myths about the measure, including its error-prone and anti-poor record, crime statistics falling even without the death penalty, victims wanting justice, not the death penalty, that does not include the death penalty, and providing alternatives that will address criminality in society, including advising our legislators to provide more resources to our law enforcement agencies. Public discourse from the first cycle to the platform, a public education campaign, and set up a communication plan with our partners. Messaging was developed to cater to digital natives and migrants alike through social media cards or memes, short videos, and protocols, making the messages go viral. Our previous issuances were shored up and updated based on our interaction on the ground and new researches. But we felt that this was not enough. We still had to grapple with the question, why do majorities of Filipinos want the death penalty? Or is that really true in the first place? Inspired by my experience during the World Congress Against Death Penalty in Oslo 3 years ago, we moved to prove that the prevailing, overwhelming public opinion for death penalty was actually a myth. We embarked on the first ever comprehensive and dedicated survey on the death penalty, and the results proved promising. From this survey, the Commission learned about people's opinion when presented with facts about the death penalty and its impact. What has shaped their opinion? Why do they think, or do they think they trust the most in upholding human rights? And what was their preferred punishment for certain crimes? with as high as 7 out of 10 Filipinos favoring alternatives to the death penalty, isolating only a core of about 30% in favor of the death penalty. In short, hindi po totoo na mayorya ng Pilipino ay nais na magkaroon ng death penalty. Ang nais nila or their cry is a cry for justice that includes punishment, not necessarily the death penalty. We have also learned that television is the biggest source of information, with the internet and social media as a rising source. In the public's trust, 9 out of 10 believe that teachers have respect for human rights, and many more information we have obtained from this survey, including the fact that the second ranking most trusted are actually the religious, if I remember the results correctly. This now takes us to a higher plane in advocating for the right to life and focusing on new allies on the right to life and the reintroduction of the death penalty. Having come full circle has also made us realize that we have to consistently nurture our advocacy. We have to help address the drivers of the death penalty campaign. We must address the concerns of the public on crime and safety by educating the public on programs that redound to effectively addressing these issues. Our success will involve solidarity with anti-death penalty advocates. In this battle for the right to life, we draw strength from the Council of the Laity of the Philippines. We join hands in Shema. We join hands in prayer and action as we look for ways to open the hearts and minds of our fellow Filipinos, especially our legislators, to reject the false promise of the death penalty, to choose life, human rights, and restorative justice. So sa madaling salita, pong salamat. With that po, I would like to share with you the technical presentation naman po, if you would allow me. Okay lang po ba, Brother June?
Yes, please po. You can share screen po.
Alright, I will share screen. Sandali lang po, ha? Iaano ko lang. Alright, let me see. Sandali po. Marami ko na pong beses na nag-say share screen, pero I'm still so unsure sometimes. Okay, do we see it now po? The screen?
Yes po. It na po.
Alright. There you go. Okay, this is what I presented po in Congress, no? Allow me to just give you a technical presentation. Pag may tanong po tayo, we can do it at the end, and I'll be happy to answer your questions po. So this was in the Committee on Justice last August 5, and we had prepared a PowerPoint presentation, but in the interest of time, we weren't able to show it, so I just delivered it orally. So allow me to just give you the portions where the discussions o yung pag-inog ng aking discussions today, no? So first is international human rights instruments, and then of course the withdrawal of the Philippines from the ICCPR and the second optional protocol, or even yung serious breach na tinatawag. So kahit hindi tayo makapag-withdraw, na alam naman natin hindi. And then some spiel on the death penalty and torture. As we know, death penalty is considered an utmost form of torture. And then other international instruments supporting the abolition of the death penalty. Tapos uuwi po tayo dun sa repercussions reinstating the death penalty. So allow me to begin, of course, with the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. We ratified this in October 23, 1986. So October 23 po, 1986 ay nakalahok na po tayo dito at state party po tayo sa ICCPR, which states, of course, that every human being has the inherent right to life, and they shall be protected by law, and no one shall be arbitrarily deprived of life. So dito po, sinasabi po ng Human Rights Committee in charge of, and they're the expert group in interpreting the ICCPR in the United Nations, says that Article 6 actually recognizes and protects the right to life of all human beings where no derogation, hindi po pwedeng masuspend. No derogation is permitted even in situations of armed conflict and other public emergencies which threatens the right to the life of the nation. It's a fundamental right whose effective protection is a prerequisite for the enjoyment of all other human rights. So kung patay na po ang tao, doon lang ma-extinguish siguro yung karapatan, no? So kailangan labanan natin ang lumaban tayo for the right to life. No? So ang sinasabi po dito is that in Article 2, tingnan nyo po, in countries which have not abolished the death penalty, that's where this is being addressed. The sentence of death may be imposed only for the most serious of crimes. Tandaan po natin ito mamaya, no, in our discussion. And in accordance with the law in force at the time of the commission of the crime and not contrary to the provisions of this present covenant and to the prevention and punishment of the crime of the genocide, which is considered a most serious crime. This penalty can only be carried out pursuant to a final judgment rendered by a competent court. Ano pong ibig sabihin nito? At the time in October 23, 1986, makikita natin na ina-address lang yung second question dun sa mga hindi nag-abolish ng death penalty. Ano pong nangyari after 1986? Nagkaroon po tayo ng 1987 Constitution at ang yung Constitution na yan ay tinatawag na Abolitionist Constitution because we have abolished the death penalty in the 1987 Constitution. Therefore, if you take a look at paragraph 2, that is only addressed to those who have not abolished the death penalty. And if you listen to the congressional deliberations, according to Congressman Rufus Rodriguez in the 1973 Constitution, there was also a provision one death penalty. Sabi po niya, no? So makikita natin na by virtue of the 1987 Constitution, Article 2 does not apply anymore to us. So again, babalikan ko yung 1987, ICCPR Article 7 through a later slide, no? Tapos uuwi po tayo dun sa second optional protocol to the ICCPR. This particular optional protocol is actually entitled Aiming at the Abolition of the Death Penalty. We ratified this on November 20, 2007. And it has a twofold obligation. First is no one within the jurisdiction of a state party to the present covenant shall be executed. The second is each state party shall take all necessary measures to abolish the death penalty. So what has happened in the Philippines between 23 October 1986 and of course ang constitution natin I believe was ratified by plebiscite Feb 2007. In between those years, nagkaroon po tayo ng reintroduction of the death penalty. It was a 1993 law. During the time of President Ramos. And we executed several people. The first was Leo Echegaray. And that alone already constituted a breach already, a violation of our obligation in the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. But what happened after that is that there was a law passed, 9346, and that law was passed in 2006. It was an act of Congress that said it prohibits the imposition of the death penalty in the Philippines. This now became the legal basis for the president to ratify and to deposit the instrument of ratification in the United Nations last November 20, 2007. It now became the basis for us to be able to ratify the second optional protocol. Now, ang obligations arising out of this is actually one is no executions. The second is all necessary measures to abolish the death penalty within our jurisdiction. So sa madaling salita, when we ratified in 2007, we were already compliant with the commitment set forth in the second optional protocol to the ICCPR. So, ang sinasabi po dito, at marami pong nagsasabi nga po, gusto nating mag-withdraw, no? Alisan na lang natin para we become compliant and we follow and honor our commitments in the international human rights commitments, no? So, ang sinasabi dito, withdrawal from of the Philippines from the ICCPR. Para pong ginawa natin dun sa ICC, International Criminal Court. Ang diferensya po doon ay ang ICC o ang Rome Statute, meron pong opt-out provision. Ang ICCPR po at saka ang second optional protocol to the ICCPR, wala pong opt-out provision. That means that with the second optional protocol, we have committed to stop death penalty, not reintroduce it in perpetuity. So what did the Human Rights Committee of the United Nations say in interpreting both the ICCPR and the second optional protocol? It says that like the ICCPR, the second optional protocol does not contain termination provisions and states parties cannot denounce it. Abolition of the death penalty is therefore legally irrevocable. Furthermore, states parties may not transform an offense which upon ratification of the covenant and at any time thereafter did not entail the death penalty into a capital offense. So, circumstances, as again, I've said this already. And then we go to the Vienna Convention on the Law of Treaties. Ito pong Vienna Convention on the Law of Treaties ay tinutulungan po tayo niyan. Of course, state party tayo dyan. Ano? Tinutulungan tayo dyan para mag-process kung paano natin susundin ang mga tratadong sinasaniban po natin. And particular articles are as follows. No? Under Article 46, paragraph 2, it states that the termination of a treaty, its denunciation or the withdrawal of a party may take place only as a result of the application of the provisions of the treaty or of the present convention. So the same rules applies to the suspension of the operation of a treaty. So under Article 54 naman, it says something similar, no? Termination may take place in conformity with the provisions of the treaty at any time by consent of all parties after consultation with all the contracting parties. And then Article 56, paragraph 2 says that no provision on termination, denunciation, or withdrawal cannot be the subject of denunciation or withdrawal unless it is established that the parties intended to admit the possibility of denunciation or withdrawal, or right of denunciation or withdrawal may be implied by the nature of the treaty. Ano pong ibig sabihin yan? Sa Article 46.2, it says na kung wala doon sa treaty ang termination o ang opt-out, hindi pwede. Sa Article 54, the same rin, no? Assuming, kunyari na pwede tayong mag-withdraw. Ang second na batayan doon or requirement is dapat may consultation, ang bawat party sa ICCPR tsaka sa second optional protocol. Sa madaling salita, ipapaalam natin sa lahat. At hindi nga yun mangyayari kasi walang opt-out provision. Ang last po is that ang sinasabi, kung papasa rin, kung tayo'y mag-ratify, kung inintend natin mag-admit ng possibility of denunciation or withdrawal. So wala po tayong ginawang reservation o declaration nung tayo ay nag-ratifika ng ICCPR tsaka ng second optional protocol. So, pero hindi yun nangyari. So, sa lahat ng punto, hindi po talaga tayo pwedeng mag-withdraw sa ICCPR tsaka sa second optional protocol. Okay. So, pupunta po tayo dun sa mga, ito po yung general comment na sinabi ko po kanina na binigyang diin ng Human Rights Committee on the right to life, no? So, hindi ko na po yan palalawigin pa because we already said that we will, I've already mentioned most, if not all, of the things that I wanted to share at this point. No? So, bukod pa sa tratadong yun, kung tayo po ay magpapasa ng batas sa death penalty, nangangahulugan po na we will be in serious breach of our international human rights obligations. Hindi lamang po doon. Meron pa rin po tayong treaty na malalabag kasi po katulad nitong international treaties that are inconsistently or are inconsistent with the death penalty for narcotic offenses, no? And we are talking about the 1961 Convention and the 1988 Convention. At nakasaad po dito na ang adequate punishment lamang po is by imprisonment or other penalties of deprivation of liberty sa 1961 Single Convention. Sa 1988 Convention naman po, they have a similar formulation. It refers to imprisonment, deprivation of liberty, pecuniary sanctions, and confiscation lamang po. And these are considered adequate punishment. Ang death penalty po is an excessive punishment, to say the least, and it is a violative of the right to life, as we have said. So we go now to another convention, no? And this is a convention against torture, cruel, inhuman, degrading treatment, or punishment. And this is also contained in Article 7 of the ICCPR, ang torture po. We consider the death penalty, of course, as the utmost form of torture. And pinasa na po natin, I believe this was in 2009, the Anti-Torture Act, and it sets forth the following. No? It is considered torture when there is use of psychoactive drugs to change the perception, memory, alertness, or will of a person, such as the use of drugs to induce extreme pain or certain symptoms of a disease. To illustrate, we raise the issue of botched executions, which occur when there is a breakdown in or departure from the protocol for a particular method of execution. The protocol can be established by norms, expectations, and advertised virtues of each methods or by the government's officially adopted execution guidelines. No? So protocol for implementing or executing a person. Examples include being administered the wrong dosages of specific drugs for lethal injection. Sometimes allergies to the drugs used can also trigger severe pain instead of a quick, and I'm always putting this in quotes, instead of a quick, painless death as the methods proposes. No? So sa madaling salita, ito yon, ano. Gusto ko lamang pundadagan that ang issue po dito is really pagpatay. Pagpatay po ang issue dito, no. At ang pagpatay, sabi nga natin, how can we demonstrate that killing is wrong when we kill ourselves? So yun lang po yung simplong lohika na gusto kong iparating din po, na killing is wrong. But when we kill ourselves, aren't we wrong as well in demonstrating that killing is wrong? Okay. So we have other international human rights instruments supporting the death penalty. Ito po yung mga tinatawag na soft laws, no? Hard law being yung mga tratado na nilagdaan natin. Ito yung resolutions adopted by the General Assembly and other bodies that call for a moratorium on the use of the death penalty. So there are 10 resolutions already from 2007 at makikita po natin dito that we always voted in favor. We even sponsored a resolution in 2007. So sa nung 2015 October we did not vote, but the last 3 resolutions we abstained. So please note that the action is abstention. It is not in favor or negative vote. So alam din po siguro ng ating mga representante sa mga embahada po ng Pilipinas in the United Nations, no, na this may be in contravention also. If we vote against these resolutions, we will be found in breach of our commitment dun sa ICCPR tsaka sa second optional protocol. Ito na po yung huli kong slide po, no, bago tayo mag-question and answer. So ano po ba ang repercussions pag ibinalik po natin ang death penalty? Of course, the first is OFWs in death row. No? Sabi nga natin, if the death penalty will be reinstated, the ability of the DFA to negotiate on behalf of our OFWs will be undermined. Moreover, our country will be considered as hypocritical if we reimpose the death penalty, but at the same time seek the lives of our OFWs who are in death row. So, sabi nga po natin, the classic example of this is actually Mary Jane Veloso. Nakiusap po tayo na wag pong i-execute si Mary Jane Veloso. Kasi po, of course, naniniwala tayo sa right to life. Meron po tayong moral high ground na tinutungtungan para makiusap. At pero higit sa lahat po, meron din po tayong tinutungtungan na legal na obligation. Kasi we have a positive obligation not only to beg for the lives of our OFWs, pero kasama din po dun sa positive obligation na yon ay wag po tayong mag-execute on our own at we do all the means necessary for us to be able to ensure that within our sphere of influence, hindi po mapapatawan ng death penalty hindi lamang po ang Pilipino, kundi lahat po ng tao sa buong mundo. Kaya nga po universal ang right to life, hindi po ba? Lahat ng tao, hindi po tayo namimili kung mabait o masama ang isang tao, kung ito ay hindi natin gusto ang isang tao, basta po tao meron pong karapatan. Yun po ang universal standard. Inherent po sa atin ang karapatan ng bawat tao. In the Mary Jane Veloso case, it also illustrates other international treaties that or agreements that may run counter to our efforts when we reinstate the death penalty. Ito po yung mga tinatawag na bilateral treaties on extradition, di ba? Kasi po, pagka ganon, ang bansa na nakaratify ng ICCPR tsaka ng second optional protocol, may tungkulin din po sila. They have a positive obligation na pag may hinihingi pong tao na ibalik sa atin via extradition, ay dapat po state party na yun ito sa bansang ito, kunyari sa Pilipinas at kunyari nagkaroon tayo ng death penalty, sapagkat po that person will be exposed to the death penalty as well. So tungkulin din po natin yon. Kaya nga po, while we beg for the lives of our OFWs in death row, that is also part of our obligation under the ICCPR and the second optional protocol. Second is of course yung confidence ng Pilipinas bilang isang miyembro ng international community, particularly the United Nations, no? Even as a possible contracting party in bilateral relations. Sino po ang maniniwala sa atin kung palagi na lang po nating tatalikuran yung mga pangakong sinabi nating gagawin natin by virtue of ratifying these international treaties, no? So for example, difficulty in cooperation on dealing with transnational crimes. Nandiyan na po tayo, no? Na we will have difficulties in enforcing extradition treaties as we deal with transnational organized crime. As in the case of Mary Jane Veloso, sinabi natin, wag patayin kasi susi rin siya para malaman natin kung sino yung sindikato na nag-operate para maging mule si Mary Jane, no? At marami pang kababayan at mga inosenteng tao o yung mga taong napaka-desperado na ginagamit sila in drug trafficking. No? So we will have difficulties in enforcing extradition treaties as we deal with transnational organized crime, most especially drug trafficking. So the reinstatement of the death penalty will create significant barriers to international law enforcement mechanisms. Extradition, I mentioned already, mutual legal assistance, agency-to-agency cooperation, particularly for those countries who have ratified. Finally, ito po napaka-importante, no? The possibility of the suspension of our general scheme of preference plus status with the EU. Example lamang po yan, ano? At marami pa pong ibang maaapektuhan. The reinstatement of the death penalty will cause the withdrawal of benefits, or may cause the withdrawal of benefits that the Philippines enjoys under the Generalized Scheme of Preference Plus, which is a trade agreement that it has signed with the European Union. Under this scheme, select Philippine products are exported to the EU, will enjoy zero tariff benefits. Previous reports on the assessment of GSP Plus has stated that ito I'm quoting na po dun sa report to the EU Parliament, no? That the reintroduction of the death penalty would be a major step backwards and raise questions regarding the Philippines' international commitments. So the EU reiterated this in its most recent assessment released in February 2020. In the joint report to the European Parliament and Council, preserved tuna is highlighted as a product which has particularly benefited from the growth of in Philippine exports to the EU market. Preparations of food and fish comprise 12.5% of the Philippine GSP exports to the European Union. So if the Philippines loses its GSP plus status, tuna exporters would be required to pay 20.5 tariffs. And in 2018, EU imported around 1.9 billion euros worth of Philippine products under the GSP trade preference. So at this point in time, and this is my last point po, we are in a pandemic, and we just want to emphasize that we cannot afford the repercussions that the reinstatement of the death penalty will bring. So the death penalty is not a deterrent. It is a false promise. The death penalty is a perfect punishment which cannot be imposed by an imperfect justice system. It is the utmost form of torture and will only bring counterproductive effects in our efforts to curb and punish crime. The reintroduction of the death penalty will render the Philippines in serious breach of international law. It will bring negative impact on our international standing and our work with the UN and in our economic relations with trade partners. So sa madaling salita po, magtulungan po tayo para masawata po natin, ma-block natin itong measure na to kasi magdudulot po talaga ng kahirapan sa atin yan. Marami pong salamat.
Maraming salamat po, Commissioner Karen. Napakaliwanag po ng inyong presentasyon. Ngayon pa lang, nagpapasalamat na kami at sinasabi ng mga nakikinig sa atin na both from a legal point of view and from the statutory and resolutions point of view, naging napakamaliwanag po. Hinihingi ko po sa mga kasama natin na isulat ninyo sa inyong sa ating chat box yung mga question para po mailatag po natin ng mabuti. At habang nagsusulat po kayo, sisimulan ko na po sa pamamagitan ng isang tanong, kung pwede po, Commissioner.
Yes.
Ano po ang sanction? What sanctions can we call for if our lawmakers would insist to reinstate the death penalty in contravention of the treaties and resolutions that we have already committed to? Kasi para bang pakiramdam natin nakikinig ba sila mo kung hindi naman nakikinig? Pakiramdam ko lang yon. Ngunit kung ipagpapatuloy nila yung kanilang mga gawain in contravention to those resolutions and treaties, saan po tayo maaaring tumakbo? Anong sanction meron po ba? Ano ang remedies na meron po ba tayo?
Siguro the better word, kaya nga po minsan yung sanctions po kasi dadating yan pagkatapos na po ng pag-reintroduce. Kaya nga po sinasabi po natin, we're warning, we're giving advice. Huwag po nating gawin. Kasi yung repercussions na yan, hindi po natin alam kung saan yan lalawig, kung saan yan dadating. Ang sinasabi lang po natin, minamap natin kung ano yung real effects nito once we do it. Kasi we've been warned already. We've been warned that let us not be in serious breach because we are committed to do it. And one of the repercussions is really, aabot po sa atin talaga yan. Babalik yan sa atin OFWs. Look at the tuna industry in the Philippines. So marami pong effects yan. Kaya nga po 'di ba ang sinasabi natin, let us discern. Magnilay po tayo. Let us reflect on the actions that we will be doing because the effects of that will be far-reaching and we won't know and we cannot estimate it. These are just the possibilities and most likely they are going to happen if we continue on this path of death.
Salamat po. Meron po mga ilang katanungan pa dito sa chat box natin. Okay? Yung isa po medyo personal. Ang tanong ni, where do you draw your courage at this time when the government is keen in reintroducing the death penalty? Yan po. Kung gusto naman ninyong sagutin dahil personal po ito. Okay?
Siguro po katulad nga nung sinabi ko kanina, parang laban lang, ganun lang.
Opo. Another question from Abet Johnson. Yung kanina po nagtanong si Ma'am Ruby Macari yon. From Abet Johnson, sabi niya, what can groups opposed to the reimposition of death penalty possibly do, knowing that the Congress is subservient to PRRD? Ako naririnig ka ngayon, Abet, ng mga kaibigan natin.
Again, reflection, no? Isipin natin. Hindi natin sinasabi na we have to acknowledge the pain. We have to acknowledge the frustration. Because hindi nga pag nakita natin talagang ayaw natin na mangyari yun sa atin Ayaw natin na may mapatay, ayaw natin na may maakusahan na pamilya natin. We often say all those things in anger and in emotion, no? Pero pag humupa na yung emotion, tingnan natin, di ba? Ang pinakamagandang example niyan, actually, si Cherry Pie Pecache. Kilala niyo po siya. Kasama po natin siya sa Advocacy. Ang sinabi po niya noon, nung nagdadasal po siya ng ama namin, sabi niya, di ba, ang words nun hindi ko na, si Bishop siguro can help me, forgive those who have sinned against us, di ba? Tapos bigla niya pong naisip Sabi niya, paano ko, how can I ask for forgiveness if I don't forgive myself? So this is something that we actually have to take to heart. Kasi pagka ang pinag-usapan na naaapektuhan tayo, ayaw natin. Of course, we're double standard, di ba? Patayin na yan, sasabihin natin. Pero pag kilala natin, o di kaya pag tayo na, hindi, di ba? It's similar to due process. This is the way we teach due process, no? Due process, sabi natin na, ay hindi talaga naman pumatayan, sige na. Dapat yan makulong panghabang buhay o dapat bitayin na yan, no? Pero nakaakusahan pa lang siya. Of course, we have all the right to defend ourselves. Sabi ko nga, pag tayo yon ang inakusahan nun, kakapit tayo sa bawat karapatan na meron tayo. Pero pag hindi natin yung ginarantiya sa ating kapwa, pagdating sa atin, what right do we have to ask for it when we did not uphold it for others? So that's what the justice is.
Bishop Abilio, sige po, please.
Ako may tanong din, Commissioner Karen. No? Salamat po sa inyong presentation. Napakaganda po, napakaliwanag. Gusto ko po lang sagutin itong yung tanong kanina. Anong magagawa natin kung ang Congress natin ay masyadong subservient sa Presidente na susunod-sunod lang? Pero tandaan po natin, ang mga Congress people natin ay mga politiko. Hindi lang yan sumusunod sa Presidente, nakikinig din sila sa sigaw ng tao. Kaya itong mga organized groups natin, o tayo mismo bilang individual, sinabi nga kanina ni Ma'am Karen, na itong false na pananaw na ito ay majority hinihingi ng tao. Hindi po majority. Pero kung minsan tumatahimik kasi yung majority. No, kaya dapat tayo magsalita. Ang mga groups natin gumawa ng konting pahayag lang, kahit na one paragraph lang, that we're against death penalty. No, tayo lang ay maglagay sa ating Facebook that we're against death penalty. At yan ay lalakas, magkano ng snowballing. At yan po ipapakinggan din ng mga politiko kapag nakita nila na ang dami pala na nagsasalita laban dito. No, at yan na po yung panawagan sa atin ngayon. Let us not wait later on tulad ng sa terror law. Huli na tayo, nagsalita tayo, nandiyan na yung batas. Ngayon, kinakraft pa lang nila yung batas and kasalita na dapat tayo. No, na ayaw natin ng ganito. At yung mga politiko, nakikinig din yan sa public opinion. Pero kailangan natin ilabas yung public opinion.
Gusto ko po susunod. Ay, sige. Go ahead po. Go ahead, Ma'am Karen.
Tatandaan ko po, Bishop, kayo din po yata yun nung nagkaroon tayo ng Walk for Life. I think that was the first time nung 4 years ago or maybe 3 years ago. I remember you say this and I often quote it, no? If all of us speak, no troll army can defeat us. So, dapat po talaga magsalita.
Gusto ko rin po susugan yung sinabi ni Bishop na kailangan na ipahayag natin kahit one-liner lang, kahit one paragraph. Meaning, sinasabi ko po ngayon, marami pong mga diocesan councils of the laity members and even their presidents are here. Kapag po meron kayong statement, kahit po isang linya, isang paragraph, isulat niyo po iyan, ipadala niyo po sa amin para po broadcast din po namin yung inyong mga stands para po tayo ay nagpapalitan. Ipapadala nyo sa amin, papadala namin sa iba, papadala nila sa inyo, magpapaikutan. Ngunit magpapakalat po tayo ng ating mga stand sa iba't ibang mga issue. So, yun po ay isang panawagan at hinihingi namin na sana ay matuloy yan. Kasama na rin po dyan yung isang panawagan ng ating past president, si Dr. Marita Wasan, na for a signature campaign. Ma'am Marisa, gusto mo bang magsalita ng konti?
Magandang hapon po sa ating lahat. Ang mga kasama po nating simbahan katulad ng mga evangelicals, mga protestante, part po ito ng grupo ng One Voice, One Faith, One Nation, ay nangangalap po ng signatures para po maparating sa ating pamahalaan na hindi natin pinapayagan na manumbalik ang death penalty dito sa ating bansa. At napakaliwanag po ng paliwanag ni Commissioner Karen na mas makakasira po ito sa ating kinabukasan, ng ating mga anak, sa ating pamilya. At bilang Katoliko, tayo pong lahat ay dapat na gumagalang sa buhay. Ito po yung ating basic moral values na dapat na isinasa buhay natin. So, sa Laiko po, meron po silang pinapamigay na pwede po namin i-email. Papadala ko po kay Joseph. At ipapadala din po sa inyo kung maaari lahat tayo sa mga dioceses, archdioceses natin. Magkaroon po tayo ng campaign signature. Kasi yung sa paliwanag na lang po ni Commissioner ay dapat talaga natin itong tutulan. Salamat po.
Salamat po, Dr. Marita. Brother Roquel, meron gusto po kayong sabihin? Nakamute pa po kayo.
Gusto ko lang sundan yung sinabi ni Marita kasi the other day, umattend kami nung meeting ng Coalition Against the Death Penalty. And ang isa sa mga signature campaign na sana mapagtulong-tulungan natin, isulatan natin yung ating mga congressmen and senators. Although daw po sa Congress, sa House of Representatives, medyo napakarami po ng for the reimposition, about 90% to 10%. So, pero makakatulong pa rin. But we have a very good chance daw po sa Senado, no? Kasi ang current na bilang nila, I don't know if that's still that's still the one that is dahil parang 13 for the reposition, 10 against and 1 undecided. Pero yung 10 na against, kasama po yung senadora na nakakulong na hindi pa pwedeng bumoto. So magiging 9 lang yon. So it's crucial daw po na sana makakita tayo ng mga 2 o 3 senador na magpapalit ng kanilang stand. And I think, sabi nga ni Bishop Abilio, kung i-express natin yan na yun ang sentiment ng mas nakararaming tao, lalo-lalo na tayo mga Katoliko Kristiyano o yung mga evangelicals, then malaking bagay po na pwede nating mapigilan yung reimposition ng death penalty. At ang Sangguniang Laiko po, I'm sure will be issuing a statement in a day or two para po maibigay po natin yung ating stand against the reimposition. And I hope the other groups that are within the Sangguniang Laiko umbrella will follow suit as well. Salamat, John.
Salamat po kay Roquel. Meron pa pong mga ilang tanong dito na halos magkakapareho. Ang isa po ay nagsabing siya ay isang ordinary housewife lang, ngunit talagang gusto niyang ipaglaban to, anong magagawa niya? Ang isang tanong naman po anong magagawa natin, paano natin kukumbinsin yung mga kapwa nating mga Katoliko na naniniwala sa kabutihan na dadalhin nitong death penalty ito. Okay? At ano ra po yung mga doable actions na po pwedeng nating gawin na napag-usapan na po ang ilan kanina. Pwede po sagutin ni Commissioner yan. Pwede rin po natin hingan si Bishop ng ilang kasagutan sa mga tanong na yan.
Ang unang-una po siguro, ang unang pumasok sa isipan ko, botante po tayo, di ba? So, siguro vote wisely. Vote for the right to life. That's the first. No? Second is communicate with our leaders, especially our representatives in Congress, and express to them what we really want. No? Na ang gusto natin is, hindi naman, alam niyo po yung false promise na yan ng death penalty. Kaya ako sinasabing false. Kasi hindi po yan deterrent. Nakita na po natin yan, shinare ko na po sa inyo. No? And if we try to take a look at the statistics, tingnan po natin yung facts around it. No? Na even during the time when we had our first execution, yung kay Leo Echegaray po, makikita natin that even rape went up. Makikita rin natin sa People versus Mateo na ito ay isang pag-aaral na ginawa rin ng ating Korte Suprema that 70% of all the death penalty cases rendered by the trial courts, mali. Meaning to say, 7 out of 10 mali ang pagpataw ng death penalty. Korte Suprema na po ang nagsabi niyan. Pag tiningnan din po natin ang pag-aaral kung sino yung napapatawan ng death penalty, makikita natin na karamihan mahihirap. At pag tinanong niyo po ang mga abogadong tumutulong sa pag-defend sa mga akusado na mga mahihirap, makikita nyo na talagang dehadong-dehado po pagka mahirap tayo kasi hindi po natin kayang i-defend ang ating sarili very well. No? Tapos narinig naman po natin sa Kongreso na marami pong nagsasabi ng iba't ibang mga benefits ng death penalty. So part of our role is also to sort out, no? Suriing mabuti yung information na binibigay at i-correct po yung maling impormasyon na sinasabi po kahit ng ating mga mambabatas. No? Kailangan nating buksan yung kanilang isip para makita na the evidence does not show that. It is not a deterrent. Death penalty also does not speed up the justice system. Ang pag-aaral po, sinasabi, swerte po tayo if in 5 years we get a verdict from the trial court. We are very lucky. Some studies say 5 to 7 years. Pagka ganun po katagal, sa tingin po ninyo ba, nakaka-speed up ang death penalty? Hindi po. Kasi po, pag tiningnan niyo po ang pag-aaral, napakatagal po bago with finality mahatulan ng death penalty. So does it really speed up the justice system? Hindi po. Napakabagal ng ating hustisya, di po ba? Tapos gusto ko po ito bigyang diin, no? Na ang mga Pilipino, they cry for justice. And that does not really include the death penalty. Pag binigyan po ng alternatibo, pag binigyan po ng choices, 7 out of 10 will not choose the death penalty po. So dapat ganun pa ulit-ulit po tayo like a mantra. Yung binahagi ko po sa kami niyan at pwede po nating i-share sa inyo. Let us do it evidence-based and let us do it in terms of our faith. In the case of the Roman Catholics, of course, it's never an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. Sa simpleng lohika lang po, of course, sinabi rin na po ito ni Mahatma Gandhi. Sabi niya po, pagka ganyan po, lahat tayo mabubulag. Di ba? Pag pinanood niyo po yung Fiddler on the Roof, si Tevye, yung main character doon. An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, magiging bungal po tayo lahat. Kung ganon. Ano po? So, hindi po ganon. Even in punishment, sinasabi ng iba, pag buhay ang binawi, buhay din dapat ang kapalit. Pero pag rape po, rape din po ba ang kapalit? So yung mga lohikang ganon, let's engage them. Hindi po natin kailangang awayin. Hindi po kailangang from high and mighty tayo na napaka-self-righteous natin. Pero let's engage them in shema, di ba? In conversation talaga. No judgment, and let us be constructive in our messaging.
Salamat po, Commissioner. May idadagdag po ba si Bishop? Yes, Bishop, please.
Okay. Tinukoy na rin ni Commissioner about our faith. Tayo po ay Katoliko kasi sumusunod tayo sa batas ng simbahang Katoliko. At ang batas ng simbahang Katoliko ay nakalagay po sa Biblia na ini-interpret po ng Catechism of the Catholic Church. The Catechism of the Catholic Church is the official interpretation sa atin ng pananampalataya natin sa ating panahon ngayon. At nakalagay po maliwanag sa Catechism of the Catholic Church that we don't accept death penalty. Kaya yung mga Katoliko na naniniwala sa death penalty, hindi po sila totoong Katoliko. At ako masasabi ko, hindi ka pwede makakapagkomunyon na tumatanggap ka sa death penalty. No, natatanggap ka ng buhay ni Kristo at pagkatapos susulong ka sa kamatayan ng iba. No, kaya dapat maging maliwanag tayo sa ating Catholic faith na nakalagay na yan sa Catechism of the Catholic Church. No, na hindi tayo sumusunod sa death penalty. Hindi yan ang parusang wasto, no, para maituwid ang tao.
Siguro po yan na rin po ang kasagutan sa tanong ni Angelica Hall. What do you think po about the church active people in the Senate, namely, Manny Pacquiao, supporting death penalty by quoting the Bible? So yun na po ang sagot, nagkamali po siya ng 1-2 punch. Hindi po niya naintindihan ng tama yung itinuturo ng ating banal na Biblia. Meron pa pong ilang katanungan. Nandito po, from Dante Chua. Ngayon po ay uso ang ayuda at maaring gamitin ito ng pamahalaan upang mapasunod ang marami nating kababayan pang sumunod sa kanilang balak. Kaya po napakahalaga at susi ng mga parokya to be in touch with the masa to educate. Ayan, okay. So it's really the education. So Ma'am Karen, ano po ba yung paraan na ma-educate namin yung masa na hindi naman lahat maintindihan yung mga tratado at mga resolusyon ng international?
Siguro po ang kailangan din po natin gawin, no? We have to be able to translate all of this into everyday language po. Everyday language. katulad po noon, sinabi ko po, sino ba naman ang may gusto ng isang taong walang isang salita? Hindi ba? So kung tayo po ay nakaka-negotiate, yung trust po di ba? Importante yan, yung dapat kampante ka na itong mga kadil mo sa transaksyon ay kapani-paniwala, hindi ba? Pero pag hindi po natin pinagkakatiwalaan ang isang taong yan kasi walang isang salita, pareho din po sa isang bansa na pumupunta sa before the international community to say we promise to do this, pero in the end pala we don't promise, di ba? So, ganun po, ibaba po natin sa ating lingwahe, mas maiintindihan po ng tao, no? Another thing siguro is maybe, ito madalas ko po itong sabihin, no? Pagka dinedemonstrate natin, ano ba yung weaponization of the law? Ang ano nun is, ginagamit mong sandata yon para gamitin laban sa kaaway mo, di ba? In simple terms. Pero ako pag nagsalita po ako ng ganon, ang ginagamit ko pong metaphor ay bato. Ang bato pwedeng gamitin para magtayo ng isang bahay. Pero ang bato pwede rin gamitin para pumukol ng tao, no? Batuhin mo yung tao para masaktan. So anong pipiliin po natin? Do we build a house or do we hurl stones to hurt somebody? So yung mga ganun pong mga mensahe, and I'm sure ang ating pong mga pare magagaling po sa ganyan. Lalo na po yung mga, pag nakikinig po kami ng sermon, di ba? Ang challenge po sa ating mga priests ay to make it more engaging and to make it more understandable. And I'm sure the gift of communication will always be there in our respective community. So messaging is really very important.
Ang ganda po ng sinasabi ni Commissioner Karen na ibaba natin sa ating mga kasamahan kung paano maipapaliwanag ito. At sinasabi niya na kayo pong nakikinig ngayon ay may paraan din kayo kung paano yung i-deliver sa mga kasamahan ninyo itong mga katotohanan ito sa paraang maintindihan nila. Kaya kung meron kayong naisip na isang, maganda yung naisip ko, itatype nyo lang yan sa email, padala nyo sa amin para nakikita namin, maganda yung naisip nila. Sabihin nila, yung kamay ay maaaring gamitin upang makatulong, ngunit pwede rin maging isang kamao. Yan, mananakit ng iba. Yan, mga ganong klase. Kayo po ay humanap din ng paraan upang maipaarating natin ang mga mensaheng to sa mga kasamahan natin. Mayroon po tayong link na ipinakita ngayon sa ating chat box. Yung unang link po ay nandoon po yung signature campaign na binanggit po kanina ni Dr. Marita Wasan. Yung pangalawa naman po ay merong no to death penalty na picture po ng kanilang seminary. Hindi ko pala po nabubuksan. Pero sa palagay ko po, kung lahat tayo ay meron ding picture, na pipicturean natin ang ating mga grupo, pipicturean natin ang PPC, pipicturean natin ang ating community, at sinasabi natin no to death penalty, isang linya lang po yan. Ngunit yung picture na yan maraming mararating. Maaari po nating ipalaganap yung mga no to death penalty na mga pictures na yan. Meron po bang ibang mga gustong nandito po ang Episcopal Commission on the Prison Pastoral Care. Nandito po sila, nakita ko po kanina
Kasama po ako sa network ng Coalition Against the Death Penalty. Matagal na po, nag-uumpisa po lang po ako sa komisyon, kasama ko na po sila.
Opo. Ako po'y tumitingin lang at baka po meron pang ibang mga gustong magtanong.
June, si Ma'am Marita, mayroon yata ang gusto sabihin.
Ay, sige po Ma'am Marita, please.
Oo. Lahat ng ginagawa natin at natututunan natin sa ating simbahan ay dapat ilalagay natin sa kalooban at siya natin ina-actualize. Ang isang test para malaman kung pro-life ka na ang buhay ay pinahahalagahan mo ay ngayon yung mga aso, yung mga pusa, may mga kanya-kanya ng ospital, may mga asosasyon na hindi mo po pwedeng saktan ang mga aso, hindi mo po pwedeng saktan ang mga pusa o anumang alaga mo dahil sa pagmamahal mo sa buhay. Ngayon na nandito yung death penalty. Ito, tao ito. Sangkatauhan ito. So, i-test natin yung puso natin. Yung pagmamahal ko ba sa aso ay katulad ng pagmamahal ko sa tao. So, yun yung pagpapahalaga na dapat ay nakikita sa atin bilang Katoliko. Bilang isang mamamayang Pilipino, pakita natin yung pagmamahal natin. Mas higit sa aso, mas higit sa pusa. Kaya dapat tutulan natin yan. Yung death penalty. Thank you po.
Maraming salamat, Ma'am Marita. From Nenita Tenefrancia, regarding the Catholic Catechism, it is important to know that recently Pope Francis re-elaborated our catechism saying that death penalty is inadmissible. Earlier, the catechism mentioned it is a recourse, maybe last. So ngayon po talagang it is inadmissible. Uulitin ko po yung request ko. Baka naman po bilang aksyon nating mga nandito ngayon at sa lahat pa ng nanunood nitong ating cross-posting, just to tell Ma'am Karen, na kino-cross-post po natin to, live po tayo nga sa CBCP Facebook, sa Sangguniang Laiko. And we usually get around 8,000 to 10,000 viewership. Challenge po natin yung mga nakikinig ngayon, kung maaari, as an action, magpa-picture po kayo at i-email nyo po sa amin o i-Viber nyo sa amin kay Joseph para po tayo ay makagawa ng no to death penalty. Sabihin nyo anong grupo kayo o anong pamilya kayo o anong diocese kayo o hatakin nyo yung obispo ninyo. Okay? Sabihin nyo, Bishop, picture nga tayo, no to death penalty. Para po yan ay maipakalat natin at sa maliit na paraan tayo po ay makatulong talaga sa pagbibigay ng kaalaman. Yes, Commissioner Karen, please.
Gusto ko pa rin po sabihin na may watch party din po sa Facebook page ng CHR. We are also being watched there. And just to say po, may pakiusap din po ako sa inyo kung pwede nyo po sanang i-like ang CHR sa FB, sa Facebook, sa Instagram, tsaka sa Twitter. Nandun po kami at CHR.gov.ph. Tapos po, kung gusto niyo po ng marami pang kaalaman tungkol sa right to life, sa anti-death penalty campaign, sa CHR, www.chr.gov.ph po. So don't forget to like us po.
Si Sister Lily sa Lilin, may gusto po siyang sabihin. Paki-unmute po, Sister.
Good afternoon. I am the Diocesan Coordinator, Pastoral Coordinator of Ligan. I'm just worried about what will be the future of our next generation pag penalty. Lalo na sa mga mahihirap. What are the effects of this death penalty to the poor inmates who have no rights to hire attorneys, and those who knows that this inmate is very, very innocent? They will not see about something about that because of this anti-terrorist bill now. So as a sister, I'm just worried, what can I do?
June,
Yes, Bishop, please.
ang isa po, sister, na pwede natin gawin, hindi lang po kayo, ngunit lahat tayo, nasa diocese o kaya nasa mga faith organizations, pwede po tayong gumawa ng poster na may ilagay natin sa labas ng ating bahay, sa labas ng ating opisina, sa labas ng ating mga simbahan. No to death penalty. At lahat ng mga taong dumadaan noon, makikita na itong mga taong taga dito ay may paninindigan. And then probably they will ask, bakit no to death penalty? So kung lahat tayo ay maglalagay kung saan tayo may influence, sa labas ng bahay natin, sa labas ng opisina natin, o kung sa labas ng simbahan natin, no to death penalty, yan po ay makikita ng mga taong dumadaan-daan.
Salamat po, Bishop. At ako naman ang magre-request kayo kay Commissioner. Commissioner, o pwede bang gumawa ang CHR ng profile pic na no to death penalty na manggagaling sa inyo para pag nakuha namin, magpapalit lang kami ng profile pic at masasabi namin kami man from the CHR no to death penalty.
Thank you for that. No, actually, our social media or our strategic communications division chief is listening, and I'm sure he will follow the advice, and we will get back to you on that. But we do have a lot of social media cards or yung memes on the death penalty na po. Ang gagawin po namin, bibigay din po namin sa inyo. Sana po mapalaganap po natin yung mga social media cards na po na yon. And we can also make the social media cards for you. Give more strategic communications people, but they'll always be happy to help you come up with posts po that you can use.
Salamat po.
Just to say po, so mag-exchange po tayo. Paki-like po kami. Tapos we will give you the all the materials that we need.
Sa mga oras pong to, gusto ko sanang lumapit muna tayo sa Panginoon upang magdasal. Binati ko po si Father Nepo kanina. Father, kumusta ka, Father Nepo? Hihingin ko sana, Father Nepo, kung maaaring with a short time, if you could lead us into a time of short intercession, just to pray for our country, pray for our people, and pray that this reimposition of death penalty would not really come into fruition. So pasensya ka na, binigla kita, Father, pero alam ko namang gusto mo yan. Sige, Father.
Thank you po. So, sabi nga po kanina, marami po tayong narinig. So, napuno na yung ating isip at tainga, ay kaya lang let us listen for a while. No? Ano yung listening for a while? Yung laging binabanggit natin ay yung ano kaya yung boses ng Diyos kay Ma'am Karen? Ano kaya yung boses ng Diyos kay Bishop? Ano kaya yung boses ng kay June o sa ating lahat? Hindi man tayo nakapagsalita. So, yung pagpaparinig sa atin ng Diyos kasi, bagay, maririnig uli natin bukas yun, first reading, Sunday, no? Kung paano mag-decipher natin ng Diyos, ay hindi pwedeng wala ang silence. Hindi pwedeng wala ang katahimikan kasi doon natin talagang nararamdaman ng Diyos. Katulad po ng ating ninanasa, pagamat naunahan ako ni Jun, kung anong ipagdadasal. Pero yun din ang salobin natin. Let us listen to God's voice. Pagamat madami nga nag-comment ang daming mga magagandang halos perfect na yung presentation. Ay sana pagdasal natin una, ay ang mga lawyer na yon na ating inelect sa Kongreso o sa Senado, ay manindigan sa katotohanan. Kasi ang katotohanan ay wala sa tao hindi hawak ng tao yun Yung magagaling pa rin sa Diyos. So, yung panalangin sa katotohanan ay lagi tayong papailalim, no? Ito po'y ibang pamamaraan ng pagdadasal, papailalim sa kahulugan ng minahal ng Diyos ang tao higit sa lahat ng kanyang creation. Nandun po sa istorya, anumang istorya ng creation accounts na dalawa nating alam dun. Ang preference ng Diyos ay maging kawangis at kalarawan ng tao. At anong punot dulo? Panalangin po natin din ang mga biktima ng social justice o ano pang anti-social, katulad ng anti-terrorism na yon, ay hindi malimutan na ang Diyos ay palaging sa atin. No? Huwag nating sayangin yung sinabi nating Merry Christmas. Kasi ang ibig sabihin, noong nakaraang mga Pasko, God is with us. Kaya, yung mga paghimok sa atin, tayo naman, pagdasal natin ang ating sarili, hindi lamang doon sa metacard na yun Hindi lang doon sa mga ideas o sa mga isinulat nating ideas. kundi yung reflection kanina ni Ma'am Karen ay talaga mauna tayo. No, mauna tayo bago natin pakita yung ating dissent sa mga ganong bagay dahil ang ating reflection ng buhay natin ay hindi reflection ng ating pangalan, hindi reflection ng ating mga gawain, kundi reflection ng ganito ang paghubog sa atin ng Diyos. Kaya nga no, hinawakan ng Panginoong Yesus si Pedro para makasakay uli sa bangka. So madami tayong pwedeng planuhin kung iaalay natin sa Diyos sa tuwi na ay hindi tayo pakikinggan niya. Dahil ang ginagawa natin ay pagpapatuloy lamang ng ginawa ni Jesus o sa plano ng Diyos. Wala namang iba yun Kung nagko-quote sila ng Bible, salvation of man through Christ in the church. Ay, sa church, we do belong. So we do pray. Amen.
Salamat po. Father Lep po, malalim po yung pakikinig na tinawag nyo, ay pinukahin nyo sa amin. Maraming salamat po. Tatawagin ko po sana si Bishop Pabilio, ngunit may nagre-request po may sasabihin yata si Ma'am Fanny Tatad. So tatawagin ko si Ma'am Fanny, pero bago ko siya tawagin, gusto ko lang magpasalamat sapagkat si Brother Mars Katan na siya pong ating host sa mga nakaraan nating mga session na ngayon ay nasa banig ng sakit, nakaramdaman, okay, ay humingi ng tulong sa atin para sa mga plasma at napakalaki ng tulong na ibinigay ni Ma'am Fanny na siyang tumawag sa Red Cross at kina Senator Gordon, kaya't napadala naman po ng plasma itong si Brother Mars. Isama po natin sa panalangin natin si Brother Mars na sana'y tuluyan siyang gumaling kasama ng kanyang asawa na pareho silang tinamaan ng karamdamang ito. Ma'am Fanny, meron daw po kayong gustong sabihin?
Yes, Brother June, gusto ko lang sundan yung sinabi ni Commissioner Karen na mahalaga na kausapin natin ang bawat isang congressman or isang senator in the areas where they come from. Yung Laiko is everywhere. It's in all the dioceses. So it's important that those who are leading Laiko in every diocese are able to communicate the position of Laiko on this issue to the respective congressmen or senators. Maaring sa palagay natin ngayon, hindi sila mag-iiba ng kanilang posisyon, pero nagkaroon na rin kami ng mga experience in the past na nagbabago din sila ng posisyon. Depende sa kung paano sila kinakausap. So pag nakikita naman nila na saliwa yung kanilang posisyon sa dapat na sundin nila dahil ang kanilang nililid ay iba ang kanilang pag-iisip tungkol dito sa issue na ito, meron pa din tayong posibilidad na mabago ang isip nila. So tama yung sinasabi ni Commissioner Karen na huwag tayong mawala ng pag-asa na kailangan kausapin natin talaga ang individual congressmen and senators. Right now, we're doing that already and we've told Bishop Pabilio that we're talking to some. Nag-iisip pa sila kung ano ang magiging desisyon nila, pero sa ngayon, malaki ang pressure sa kanila na ipasa ito. So, palagay ko dapat lakas-lakasan din natin yung pressure na nanggagaling sa ibaba. Yun lang ang gusto kong sabihin. At maraming salamat, Commissioner Karen. This is the second time I'm listening to you. I listened to your presentation in Congress and I was already very impressed with what you said there. Yes.
Maraming po salamat.
Salamat po, Ma'am Fanny. From Jerry Bernabe, bibilisan ko lang, we at the CBCP EPCC joins the Laiko in saying no to the death penalty for it violates the inherent dignity of a person which is not lost despite the commission of a crime. No person, no matter how evil he is perceived to be, is beyond reformation. At dahil po dyan, may pastoral letter din pong ilinabas yung Episcopal Commission ng ECPPC. Ipangalat po natin yan. Kahit po hindi na tayo magsalta, i-share lang natin at ipangalat natin ang paninindigan ng ating Episcopal Conferences, ang Catholic Bishops Conference po. Sa takdang ito po, Bishop Pabilio, maaari po ba kung makahingi ng final words at ang final na pasasalamat para kay Ma'am Karen po?
Maraming salamat po, Ma'am Karen, for taking time to be with us. No? At ang isang magandang panawagan ni Ma'am Karen, let us try to widen our networks. At ito, nag-iimbita nga siya na lahat tayo, sana maging bahagi ng network ng CHR. No? At iba pang mga network, kasi ito po hindi natin makukuha ng ating sarili lang. At alam natin, marami mga grupo na kumikilos, kailangan natin pag-isahin yung ating mga kakayanan. No? At ako'y patuloy na nagpapasalamat sa inyo na kasama tayo rito na kahit na linggo-linggo tuwing Sabado tayo nagkikita, ngunit tuloy-tuloy pa rin ang inyong pagsunod sa amin. No, salamat sa inyong patuloy na pagsubaybay, pero ang inaanyayahan ko kayo na mag-imbita pa ng iba. If it is helpful for you, it would also be helpful for the others. Para sumama dito sa bagay, hindi naman sila lalabas ng bahay, magbibigay lang ng panahon, buksan lang ito, at marami pa tayong ibang pag-uusapan tungkol po sa nangyayari sa ating bayan. And one more thing that we can do is to continue in our prayers. Mahalaga din ang magagawa ng dasal. Kahit na nasa bahay lamang tayo, kaya iba nagtatanong, ano pong magagawa namin? May sinabi na, no, tungkol sa paglalike lang sa CHR, tungkol sa paglalagay ng poster sa bahay, tungkol sa pagpapapicture na no to death penalty. Pero isa rin pwede natin magawa is include this in our prayers. No, every day, let us pray for this. No, kasi malaki rin ang power ng prayer, lalong-lalo na to convert hearts and to convert minds. So maraming salamat uli and see you next week. So, Father June, ano yung gagawin natin next week?
Again, nagbago po ang ating schedule. Most likely, babalik po tayo dun sa usapan ng ECQ at saka yung pandemic because we would like to see the result of the 2-week na MECQ. So, pumayag po ang susunod po dating topic, pumayag po ang Philippine College of yung physicians to speak to us about the state of the pandemic in the country, especially the results of the 2-week MECQ. So yun po. Aking tinatawag ang langit at ang lupa na pinakasaksi laban sa inyo sa araw na ito, na aking ilagay sa harap mo ang buhay at kamatayan, ang pagpapala at ang sumpa. Kaya't piliin mo ang buhay, upang ikaw ay mabuhay, ikaw at ang iyong binhi. Napakaliwanag po na itinuro sa atin sa araw na ito ng mga desisyon at mga kilos natin ngayon ay magkakaroon ng impact, ng resulta, ng repercussion sa mga susunod pang henerasyon. Hindi lang tayo ang tatamaan nito, kundi ang ating mga anak, ang mga susunod pa nating mga kaapu-apuhan, ang mga binhi na manggagaling sa atin. Kaya't kailangan tayong manindigan. At binigay sa atin ng Panginoon, buhay o kamatayan, ngunit sinasabi niya, piliin mo ang buhay. Maraming salamat po sa inyong lahat. Alam ko po, marami tayong natutunan. Palakpak tayo kay Commissioner Karen. Thank you, Commissioner. Maraming salamat po. And again, we'd like to thank Joseph for preparing all these things. Yung mga pictures po nyo, magpa-picture kayo, padala nyo sa amin. Kung meron kayong statement, padala nyo sa amin. Kung may poster kayo, lagay nyo sa mga bahay ninyo. Makinig kayo, be silent, listen. Okay? Kailangan po at hanapin ang salita ng Diyos sa ating mga puso to strengthen us in our resolve. Panalangin natin ang ating bayan at magkita-kita po tayo muli sa susunod. And don't forget to like the CHR FB page. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you po.
Thank you po lahat.
Thank you.
Thank you po sa lahat. Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you
Thank
po.
you.
Thank you po, Bishop.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Salamat, Bishop.
Salamat po.
Thank you, June.
Thank you,
Thank you,
ma'am.
Bishop. Thank you, Bishop. Thank you, June. Thank you, Brother Ken.
Thank you then, Ben.
Thank you po sa blessings, Bishop.
Benny.
God is telling all of us right now, whoever you are, wherever you are, be still and know that I am God.
So how will you recognize a true Christian? The true Christian is always grateful. The favorite word of the true Christian is thank you. Because for the true Christian, everything is a gift.
When you die to yourself, forget yourself, and give yourself as a gift to another person, that, my friend, is when you taste authentic, permanent joy.
This is Faith Watch TV, today's leading Catholic online TV. We at Faith Watch create all original content ranging from reflections from the Church's bishops and priests, lessons on catechesis, testimonies of your favorite inspirational speakers, talk shows, and news programs. Powered by Areopagus Communications, Faith Watch TV aims to deliver to you the best and the latest inside and around the Catholic Church, neatly packaged for the Filipino Catholic. Faith Watch TV, today's leading online TV, your Catholic channel.